Lesson 7-1, Reading and Writing Expressions. Number 1, consider the expression 5 1/3 plus 5/6 minus a half. Now we can see clearly there's two operations in this expression. We're adding here and we're subtracting here. We also notice that there's parentheses surrounding the fractions here. Part A, which operation is done first, subtraction or addition? So if you remember the order of operations, anytime we see parentheses in an expression, we're going to do the steps inside of those parentheses first. So in this case, subtraction would come first, not because on its own it ranks higher than adding. Actually, they have an equal rank, but because it appears inside the parentheses, we're going to perform that first. And let's actually start to solve this. 5/6 minus a half. Well, we know to add or subtract fractions or mixed numbers, we need a common denominator. The larger of the two denominators is 6. Will 6 work for 2? Yes, it will. Let's rewrite 1/2 as 3/6. And then this whole step inside parentheses becomes 5/6 minus 3/6, which is 2/6, or simplify to be 1/3. And then 5 1/3 plus the 1/3 equals 5 2/3. Now we're asked to write the computation in words. Okay, so one way to do this would be to write it in terms of how we're actually solving it. And so first, we are going to do subtract 1/2 from 5/6, and then add 5 1/3. Now, are there different ways that we could write this in words? Sure. We could try to express it from left to right by saying something like, add 5 1/3 to the difference of 5/6 1/2. Notice how I used a different vocabulary word. Instead of using the verb subtract, I used difference to describe that, yep, we're talking about what you get when you do 5/6 minus a half. So a few different ways that we could play around with that depending on your preference. The main point is we've got to be clear and accurate in how we are expressing it. Let's move on. Number 2, consider the expression 2 1/10 plus 3 times 2/10. And notice that this period at the end is just a period at the end of a sentence. This is not an extra decimal point. Part A, which operation is done first, addition or multiplication? And those are the two operations. Well, there's no parentheses in this expression, so which of these two gets a higher ranking? If you said multiplication, you would be correct. And let's actually solve that. If we do the multiplication first, we're taking 3 multiplied by 2/10. Can you do that as mental math? 1 push to clear the decimal point out. 3 times 2 is 6. 1 push back, and that allows us to rewrite this part of the expression as 6/10. Now, let's add it. 2 1/10 plus 6/10 equals 2 7/10. Write the computation in words. Okay. Again, different ways to do it depending on our preference. I'm going to try to write it in the same sequence as if we were solving it. We know we're doing the multiplication first, so I'm going to say multiply 3 and 2/10, and then add 2 1/10. Now you could say add 2 1/10 to the product of 3 2/10 if you wanted to use that vocabulary, but I'm going with this way. Problems 3 through 6 were given expressions, and we are asked to translate them or write them in words. And in general, I'm going to follow the same style that you'll see down below when we get into these, where these are all starting with the verb, and I'm going to do that. That doesn't make it the only way. That's just the way I'm going to do it. 4 divided by a half, I'm going to say divide 4 by 1/2. Next, we're subtracting here. Subtract 4 from x? No. X from 4. 2 operations. We're dividing and we're adding. Which is the higher rank? In this case, it's the division. Divide 2 8/10 by 7/10. And then add 8/10. 2 operations. Which one do we rank higher? In this case, it's the addition, only because it's appearing inside the parentheses. Add 3 and 4, and then multiply by 10. Down here, we are simply doing the reverse. We are given the expression in words, and we need to translate that into an expression using operation symbols. Add 1/10 and 1/2. Subtract the product of 2 and 9 from 50. Product means multiplication. Subtract the product of 2 and 9 from 50. Okay. You got to think about this one. But I'll give you a clue. Subtract and multiplying, well, you could use parentheses. Subtract the product of 2 and 9 from 50. So this is a 50 minus 2 times 9. I'm subtracting the product of 2 and 9. Yep, even though we show the 2 operations here, we know multiplication is a higher rank. The product of 2 and 9 is being subtracted from 50. Divide 8 by 3 and then add 2 and 5/10. Okay. 8 divided by 3 plus 2 and 5/10. And finally, multiply 57 by the sum of 2 in the variable a. Okay. So be careful with this one. Notice that there's something missing here. Because if I just write it like this, yeah, it seems like I'm showing the sum of 2 and a, and it seems like I'm showing multiply by 57, but without parentheses, the order of operations would have me do multiply a times 57 and then add 2. I need parentheses to show, no. I'm talking about finding the sum here first and then multiplying by 57.